Buenos dias. Welcome to the fourth installment of iAMradio. I need to come up with a tagline. I would love to keep it real here, and maybe there's something around those things. Good morning, guys. Good morning. Okay, so today I want to talk about the self. I also want to talk about how to read the world around you to know thyself. And I think I want to talk about, if you have a quote, a famous quote, maybe it's not famous. If you have a quote that you're like, what's this really mean? Or what's applicable about this? I love to play that game. So just shout that when it comes up. Okay, why are we talking about the self? Well, because you think you have one. And while you do, you don't. There is a Wu Wei quote that says, because listen, it's a streetcar. So nice, I love that. I love when that happens. Wu Wei has a quote that says, 99% of your problems are about the self, or something like, why are you miserable? 99% of your problems are about the self, and there isn't one. What does that mean? What's that mean? Well, if you watch the God Forum, I talked about it a little bit there, and then I also talked about it, I think, in iAMradio 1 or 2. There is an illusion of separateness. And when you hear mystics, spirituality, religion will talk about oneness, what they're talking about is basically just acknowledging, and you can do it on a very grounded level, it's acknowledging we're all on this, if it is a spinning rock, together. At a very basic level, you can say, like, there is a closed system inclusive of all people and all things, and one. If you pour water out of somewhere, it goes somewhere else. That's basically what that looks like. And there are nested systems, and you can also look at it as an energetic field, which is kind of how I see it, where all things are of the same substance. How is this helpful? Well, then you can, if you want, start to look at things as like the same as you or a part of you, and you can create an experience that feels more with life than against life. And why does that make a difference? Because it feels so much fucking better. A lot of the feelings that we're trying to get are through what we perceive to be the domination of ourselves or of life or of others. Some kind of control we think will make us feel safe and happy and peaceful. But most of that figuring doesn't show up consciously. You're not hearing like, take control of this relationship so that you have peace. What you hear is, those motherfuckers did it again. The mind is so funny in the way that it misplaces, displaces, overplaces your discomfort. It takes your shit and it puts it all over everything and everybody else. And so you're never thinking like, man, I'm deeply hurt from that thing that happened a long time ago. What you're thinking is, I'll never let them close to me because blah, 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 blah. And you believe you, and you act on those thoughts. Well, that's a good segue into symbolism. First of all, does anybody have anything that's coming up for them right now that they want to put into this conversation? My coffee might be really hot. It's not, it's fine. Okay, so this is what comes to me naturally. And I'll lead with saying your greatest gift is generally your biggest pain in the ass until you claim it. I could not escape this as part of myself. And it wasn't until I embraced it that I got to enjoy the upside of it instead of just feel like what was hard about it. And this is what I think of as X-Men gifts. And I would venture to guess that if you're in my studio audience, you've got some X-Men gifts yourself. And what does that mean? It basically means that you've adapted in a way you have adapted in survival or discomfort in a way that allowed for you to, it's like you can do something that you needed to do, and maybe you don't need to do it anymore, but you can use it. So some people, for example, somebody might have an X-Men power where they can be super aware and sensitive to other people's thoughts and feelings. If they're using that to control other people, not so great. If they're using that to adjust their own expression to fit what they think the other people need, not so great. But if they use that to teach somebody by being able to see and accept all their emotions without judgment, like, that's pretty cool. So my X-Men gift is I read the world like symbolism. It's kind of like I sit in an audience as if I was a play critic, and I was like, oh, that's an interesting choice. They used a red dress. Well, the red means Allah. And you can basically read 360 the world around you to see who you really are. So you have an idea of yourself. I just put some fringe on there. But your idea ain't you. Let me tell you why. When you're in the room that you're in right now, there's a lot of things that are there. What stands out to you is a function of your personal story. So what you choose to think about and record in the room you're in right now isn't everything that's there. It's just what stands out to you. Similarly, at different points in history, times before now, you took notes on what was happening, and what was happening wasn't all that was happening. And not only did you do that, but you came up with what that meant and how it fits into your overall explanation of self. Steve Jobs says, or no, Jeff Bezos says at the beginning of in an interview for the book The Everything Store, that he's like, I never want to write a book about Amazon because you can tell whatever story you want. That's the truth. From your moment, your creative moment, where you're standing right now, you could, if you wanted, explain anything about yourself, about other people, about the world, using the facts of history that are available to you. And you would likely convince other people because you tell a story that made sense. But it's not the story. Nobody knows the story. There isn't the story. And this is important because we take our little personal past and we make it mean something that holds us back from our now and our potential and our later, when it's just a story we learned to tell. It's kind of like, let's say that one day you walked into the kitchen and somebody had put one of the larger spoons in the wrong drawer. It would be like spending the rest of your life looking for spoons in the wrong drawer. Most of the spoons were in the right drawer, but the one spoon that was in the wrong drawer, every time you came to the kitchen to get a spoon, you went to the wrong drawer, but it's not there. You're just like, let it go. Let it go. That wasn't even the whole story. When you think about yourself, what you think about are the things that you have to think about, and what you have to think about are usually what people have said to you and or what is rewarded in our culture. So our culture generally reinforces things that fit with a little work at your desk, be a good robot type of stuff. And so we value things like productivity, and we value things like achievement, and these different concepts that maybe don't personally resonate with everybody. And yet, if you don't personally resonate with it and you're not active in achieving in it, you probably still judge yourself for not being those things. So you have this idea of who you should be next to the idea of who you think you are. And so like I was saying about the idea of who you think you are, it includes things that people said to you. What somebody says to you is limited to what they can think to point out. And who knows, they might have said it after having seen something really upsetting. The way that our emotions roll from event and activity to activity is pretty nuts. It's pretty nuts. And like I was saying at the beginning about how we take all of our own shit and project it outward, we do that with our emotional experience. You could have an upsetting phone call. You could know that it was upsetting. 15 minutes later, you could be in your car and be mad at the car next to you and think it's because of what they're doing, when really you're still upset about your phone call. So we walk around kind of like passing out all this stuff that doesn't even really belong out there, but is ours to claim. And when you claim it and you bring it home and you transmute it, which basically means you come to see, you feel what's there, you come to see what you're thinking about it that's unreal, you get that power back. And so for the phone call example, it would be the same as after your call, you're like fuming. After your call, you sit down and you say like, why was that so upsetting to me? Maybe you're still upset at that point. So maybe that's not the time to ask that question. Maybe instead what you do is you breathe with it. You're like, it's okay, I'm upset. I'm okay to be upset. I know that maybe it doesn't make the most sense to be upset, but it doesn't matter because I am. And you breathe it out and you be with it and you let it move through your body. And then once you're calm, you can say, well, that was interesting. I wonder why I was so upset. And maybe what you find is that you think that it means that the other person doesn't care about the work that you're doing. And then you can ask, do I know that to be true or do I think that to be true? And going back to like how we throw our shit on the world, that might be an idea you picked up in preschool where you were like, nobody cares about what I'm coloring right now. And so the rest of your life, no matter what anybody's doing, all you're seeing is nobody cares about what I'm coloring. And you respond from that place. And so it's reinforced as that's what's real. And you build out this whole world for yourself. That's kind of like what I'm saying when you read the world around you, what you can do is see like, where am I upset? And you use that to back into what misbelief you have about yourself or the world. You allow the belief to correct, you feel whatever's there, and then you gain that place to color. So the process of reclamation of power is really kind of like cleaning off a whiteboard. Every time you clear the space on the whiteboard, then you get to draw something else there. The whiteboard that you have doesn't even look like a whiteboard. It looks like a web blackboard. So you don't even know that it can be white. You think maybe just this part or that part, but the whole thing can be white. And that basically means that you then have the freedom to interact with it from a place of love. And that's what that feeling of interacting with it from a place of love is what you're trying to get by controlling everybody and everything else. Let's be real. Okay, so going back to your personal story, you record things people say to you. School was really easy for me. People would say, Shaylee, you're so smart, you're so smart, you're so smart. One, that's really not a helpful term to anybody. But two, there's a book I think called Mindset that does a great job talking about this, but it does create a little bit of a complex because then you're afraid to not be smart. And I also spent a good chunk of my adulthood being curious, if I was so fucking smart, why couldn't I do certain things? And the certain things were really around like not being a part of relationships that weren't healthy for me or planning more for the future. Like there were things I wasn't doing that I was judging against this idea of I'm so smart. So here's something that was supposed to be helpful that actually ended up holding me in self-rejection. It's not their fault. They were doing their best. But as an adult, when you're stepping into your power, you can ask, okay, what do I have on my clipboard of who I think I am? And what is my relationship to that? Does it help me or does it hurt me? If it doesn't help you, like, you can let it go because someone else could equally say, like, I'm not smart. And so it doesn't even really matter what anybody says. What matters is the experience that you're having and how much of you is available in the present to work with what is. So you have the things that people say to you. Another example of that is my dad told me, and I love him, we have a good relationship now. He told me then that I was really clumsy. And he used to make a lot of comments about how I wasn't coordinated. I got to college. I'm pretty fucking athletic. I had no idea. I believed what he was saying, and so I wouldn't participate in things because he said that. And maybe I was clumsy at first. I don't know. Maybe he just saw that. I don't know. Maybe he thought it was a cute, cuddly thing to say. I don't know. But the point is, I owned that as true for me, and I filtered what I took on through that lens. So going back to the smart thing, I know a lot of people who didn't get "you're so smart" feedback from the modern school system. What they got was, you're not smart, you don't pick up stuff. They concluded all of these unhelpful ideas about themselves because of the feedback from the school system. I'll tell you, and like, God bless everything and everybody and everyone, but the school system isn't for everybody. We are all uniquely built, and it doesn't seem, honestly, to support a human's a human's natural individual intelligence at all. It seems to kind of to press it down. And when I'm talking about different practices and systems that are present, I always want to be respectful to the people that are in them, because they're doing their best and they're trying to help. I think a lot of the ways that we behave in finance and medical community and education and government, etc., are upstream. Like, they're kind of like that what's being pumped out has been passed down. And so it is helpful, I think, to ask, they said to do it this way. Does that actually achieve the main objective with school? What's the main objective? Well, to achieve it's prepare the person to be successful in life. What do they need to do for that? They need to believe in themselves. They need to be able to hear other people. They need to be able to appreciate they're different than everybody else. Those are the things that kids need. iAMradio. Actually, I am looking for a few parents who would be, I'm working on something. If you have children and you're open to experimenting, let me know. Looking at you, Jeremiah. You guys are doing great things with your kids. Not that I would think that other people aren't. It's just that I think you'd already be close to what I'd be suggesting. All right. So, the self. Oh yeah. So you have this idea of who you are, and you walk around and you choose what you do based on who you think you are, how you think things were, and and generally it limits what's available to you. And what I'm pointing out is what you have on record isn't accurate. So it's kind of like you have this meal that you're cooking at home. You have a shopping list from 1980. You go out to the grocery store and you say, I'm only going to buy stuff on the list. But what's on the list doesn't match what's at the kitchen. It also isn't really at the store. And so you kind of wander around feeling dejected and like something's wrong with you because you can't find the stuff that's on the list, but the stuff on the list from a long time ago. And what you're cooking at home is then you really can't. You feel like you can't, but the list isn't real. It's not real. Does this mean that you might? Okay, so yes, there will be events that stand out in your past. Yes, there will be huge events that don't stand out at all, that make a big impact on how you judge yourself. So you've got the conscious idea of self. These are the things that you would say, like, well, who are you, Shaylee? These are the things that you would think to say. And then you have the subconscious ideas, the ones behind those and below those that you're not aware of, that drive more of your behavior than anything else. How I kind of got into this was asking questions about what influences behavior. And what I found at the very top of it is identity. You can, as much as you want. So influence, here's the behavior. Let's say, read every morning for 5 minutes. Like that, let's say that's the habit or the behavior. You could say, well, first I'll set up my environment to support that. That's one level. That works, but maybe that still doesn't do it. There might be another level behind that, how you're feeling about it, and maybe at the feeling level you think, well, I can get excited about what reading every day will do, and that'll make a difference. But it's not the whole way there. And then you might think like, okay, well, why do I think I need to read it, and put it in the context of your life, and that might affect behavior. But until you actually identify as somebody who reads every morning, you're gonna need effort and will to make yourself do it. There'll be resistance because you don't think that you read every morning. You think you need to make yourself do it. And that's a very basic example, but if you think about that in love or relationships or communicating or professional expression, all these different things, you can kind of like finagle hacks at the lower level to drive a result. You see this with nutrition a lot. Someone will take on a program, 75 hard, 30 whole, something, and that's the layer, that kind of right above behavior that's like, here's your structure. But unless the structure fits in those other pieces, unless you actually think that you're somebody that does these things, and maybe that's why 75 hard works for most people, or people like it, because it's long enough for someone to change how they think about themselves. But if you start at that level, you don't have to convince yourself that you are something else. All you need to do is stop seeing that you're not what you think you are. So, for example, if I have somebody and I spent a bunch of years working with changing physical behavior, so when I come at this, I'm not coming at it from like, from my tower of like never talking to people. It's like, no, I was on the ground working these things. If somebody was not exercising it very much and they thought that they should be exercising that more, and maybe they thought that for 6 or 7 months, and they're like, I need to go to the gym, I just need to, and they'll say, I just need to do this thing, but they don't do it, and they feel bad about not doing it. What I would say, instead of trying to force them to do the thing they're not doing, would say, hey, where are you actually a little bit more active than you're recording? Well, I do, clean up the kids' toys and I mow the lawn. It's like, okay, let's start to count the activity that you have. The person then begins to raise their identification to that of somebody who's active, where gym is a natural expression. And so before, where there had been this uphill battle to make themselves go to the gym, they're suddenly there. It's magical. And that really is how identity influences behavior. If you think that you're not worthy, you'll do all kinds of weird stuff to get that feeling. If you identify as worthy, and that's a deep one to kind of crack at, then you take opportunities, you do all these different things that you might have tried to. It's kind of like, I need to get all the money, all the success, all the relationships so that I feel good enough. But again, it doesn't come to the conscious mind as, let me get this relationship so that I love myself. It comes as, oh man, I hope, we go on vacation next year. You're very rarely listening to the actual reasoning behind why you want or are doing what you're doing. And it's kind of cute because underneath it, you just want to be loved. You just want to be loved. So if you can allow yourself to start to love yourself and be with your emotions, then those things you think you need to do to feel those feels, that pressure starts to subside. You stop having those thoughts about how to change things. And because you don't hold yourself in contempt for not doing them, you have more room to kind of enjoy your life. Nothing will have changed except you, and that's enough. Anybody have thoughts or feelings so far? Anything that's here? I would not have believed the simplicity of the self-love thing. Self-love is my favorite thing to teach because it moves everything else. And self-love is basically saying yes to your personal experience. It's saying, I feel this way, this is happening, okay. You don't have to shout about it. You don't need to write love poems about it. You don't need to do anything about it. All you need to do to facilitate the experience of self-love is not to say that it's wrong and try to fix it. So it's taking a second, and if you're having a thought storm, rather than saying, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening again, why you just say, I'm having a thought storm. And you breathe with it. Or if you're mad or sad about something that you think is irrational or unreasonable, you don't try to make you neutral about it. You say, I seem to be really upset. It's okay to be upset. Because it is. Self-love is hard to achieve. Yes. In many ways, we are swimming upstream in that current. Most of the messaging externally is around how you're not good. So with that comment, self-love is hard to achieve. The way to self-love that is to say, it's okay that it's hard. It's okay. And if you don't push on it, eventually then you start to experience it. and then it infiltrates to the other areas. Hey, David. Okay, so in summary, today I talked about how your concept of self, your personal history, is pretty inaccurate, and it can come to play a major role in how you interact with the present and how you think into your future, because you think you're these things. I talked about how to pull some of your stuff back from the world around you, and that looks like taking ownership of your emotions. If you got a lot of activity going on in here, lots up here or lots in here, that would likely be a good signal that there's something there for you to explore. You're going to think at first, you're going to think it's what they're doing. You're going to think it's what happened. You're going to think it's this, but it's not. It's up in here. And that, when I'm talking about like the metaphysical, it's that. It's inside out. And I tried to surrender this as my way to approach life, because I thought that it was too much at certain. I was like, oh my, like my the way that I was feeling about it was just too much. So I tried to put it down and live on the ground, but that really doesn't work. It doesn't work. And what I was saying earlier about your X-Men skill, there's a way to come to claim it that doesn't drain you, but lifts you and your friends. So what happened for me in transitioning this skill for good, instead of being kind of cannibalistic of self, was to work with my underlying fear and pain. When you have unresolved feels in your system, whatever you got going on, it's gonna like filter out through there. It kind of revs it up. If you're scared, if you're at a deep level rejecting yourself, then everything that you're doing will reflect that, even if you think that it's a good thing. Until the where the action originates goes higher or is accepted, it's not. It seems like the action isn't holistic. It's how we choose to react. Yeah, I think when we're looking at choice, A Course in Miracles talks about this. It's one of my favorite books. I cut and paste on this one. But A Choice in Miracles simplifies it to you really have two choices: love and fear. And with all the work that I've done, I'd have to agree with that, because outside of that, it doesn't seem like it matters if you choose A or B. It seems more important if you choose A because you don't want to choose B, or if you choose A because it feels good to you, or if you choose B because you want to explore and grow, or if you choose B because you think you have to. It's more, are you choosing what you're choosing in love or fear? And it seems like that intention changes. It seems like that makes a big deal. Does anyone have anything else before we close today? Reading the world around you is, it is a little trippy at first. Can pull some other questions to the forefront, kind of like, well, if this is true, then what else is true? It does seem to me you're in this 360 theater that is reflecting back to you at all times what you have happening at a conscious and a subconscious level. And when you don't fight what's happening outside and you start to work with acceptance on the inside, then it moves. A lot of mystics use the example of trying to change what's happening in a mirror. Well, if you want the mirror to be different, you gotta move different. You can't yell at the mirror to change. And I have found this to be true in everywhere I've looked. Doesn't mean that it is for everybody and always, but if you do have some recurring difficulties or some things that aren't working for you, this might be something that's fun to explore. And if you want help with it, you can let me know. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out to iAMradio. It's really helpful. I really appreciate the messages you've been sending about like that. It's helpful. If there's anything that you want to talk about or anything that, like anything that's there for you, I'm super interested. You're welcome. My main point here is this is what's here for me to do. Like, this is the natural expression of where I am. And also, there are some really simple tweaks you can make on the inside that really do help you connect with yourself and a sense of peace. And I know some, and I would love to share them. So, thank you so much. Have a great day, guys.